So are you able to disclose or
nothing about my life
dance
right now.
around why you feel exhausted?
No, I'm sure it'll make sense to people eventually. It's been a tiring few weeks. How have you been?
Good. Back from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a fun trip. Was able to visit. I just realized my camera's in kind of a weird position. Was able to visit the Summerfall folks making this musical in Melbourne.
Fantastic.
And also hang out with my friends from the band Tripod in person, which I had not seen in person since I think 2016. So we've had like a million Zoom calls.
Because you did the Assassin's Creed stuff with them, right? They wrote some songs for that, right?
Yeah. It's like a fun sort of just round robin of stuff because they initially reached out to me. They got hired by the Melbourne Symphony to do an evening length show, an orchestra cabaret show of like songs about being gamers, basically like a comedy sort of quasi musical.
I have a memory of sitting in that room listening to some of those songs. Yeah,
it's because it's like my favorite thing ever. So yeah, they basically started writing these songs, and then the guy who had hired them on behalf of the Melbourne Symphony said, you should really have a kind of fourth leg to this operation that can handle the orchestra side of it. So initially I was brought in just purely as an orchestrator, but they really kind of let me into the creative process of the show they were building and integrated me as a conductor and as like a sort of character in the show, which was a lot of fun. And we kind of egged each other on to go into crazy directions. And then I was actively working on Assassin's Creed Syndicate in parallel with that project. So then when Ubisoft was like, we need to write songs, I said, I know these guys who can work on the lyrics and or just co-write the songs. I think they were officially hired as lyricists, but they contributed huge amounts of music as well in that. So they were definitely co-songwriters. Amazing stuff that they did. And so then it was like, just need every excuse possible to keep working with these guys. So we've done some spec stuff over the years and a few little odds and ends. And then when this musical thing came up, it was like, they've got to be involved. Because they're not just songwriters. They're also like big nerds for musical theater. So it's like exactly the most perfect people for the job that can be imagined. They're incredible musicians, songwriters, theater nerds, and diehard gamers. So apparently one of the recurring jokes was when one of them would go play like PvP kind of like Halo or whatever after we'd finished the project, whoever he'd play with assumed that like Gatesy is the guy from Tripod. He said that there would be like essentially a curse word in their house of someone would yell "Wintry" whenever Gatesy like won a round in like a kind of a PvP, because the presumption was, by knowing me, he has some kind of insider like of all possible games,
to the secrets of video games.
Yeah, like by knowing
You're
anyone
his
in the
uncle
industry.
at Nintendo, that's what it is.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I had cheat codes to all games that have ever existed. And so if he won, it was clearly some unfair advantage. That killed me. I always thought that was the funniest. I was like, God, I wish I had that.
Look, it's Marcus Phoenix. How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. How you doing? I'm Marcus Phoenix. It's my worst John DiMaggio.
It was solid. I mean, doing a good John DiMaggio is not necessarily a good sign in the animation industry, is it? That was the big controversy.
What was the big controversy? What did I miss?
People being hired to do a good John DiMaggio for what was it, Futurama? Was it?
Oh yeah, dude.
But didn't that immediately
wasn't that died down very quickly, I think. Yeah,
like it never actually went to air. That like they never actually, I think, recorded anything or finalized anything. Didn't they basically resolve that before they even really kind of started?
Yeah, and I queue up the people to go, Troy's told this story before, but when I pretty much first got into LA,
it's always in that voice.
Wait,
sure.
Hold on a second, pause. Mike, how are you?
I'm a bit exhausted. Yeah, I'm a bit tired. Do I look tired?
Yeah. What the fuck is going on with your lighting, bro?
My lighting. I'm looking. Yeah, I've not got it set up. Apologies. Sorry, you've come to expect a certain standard from me lighting wise. I've just realised I've not lived up to what I'm meant to be doing for you on this call, Troy, and I'm very sorry.
Thank you.
It's
This is coming up on your peer review, motherfucker.
Yeah, most people
I just
don't
finished
realize
a round of doing those with my team. That is a big commitment every month. It's great.
And trivia about this show that we have quarterly reviews where we give strong evaluations. And we pass around the speaking pillow
quad directional feedback rounds. Yeah, that's great.
Debbie in HR last time was like, guys, we really need to be better about our communication skills. I was like, I know she handed those worksheets, and then it was
we're improving
all about,
though.
Yeah.
Everybody took it to heart.
Clark in accounting, though, is like still being slow on my check.
And there's absolutely no suggestion of hostile takeover that we have no Alanah this time. Absolutely none. She hasn't been run off of the.
We fired her.
Never find the body.
We had a group meeting.
Exactly.
We figured it out. We felt that ultimately Alanah had to go spend time with her.
There was a weak link.
New dog.
Yeah, and we as a team decided that our best opportunities lie elsewhere.
Yeah. I thought it was great.
Crucially, we will continue to upload to her channel and may occasionally invite her on for guest spots.
Yeah, that was part of the
settlement. That
feels
like the right thing to do. I think it was great that like Banjo kind of got his own green card, so to speak. Like Alanah was like, now I'm officially here in this country, and Banjo was like, now I'm officially yours. That was kind of cool.
And the priorities
Banjo was
fighting.
Banjo didn't want to be with some like person who was going to get sent back any moment. That was what it was.
Mike Bithell.
Hi, Troy Baker.
Guess what I am like totally, timestamps, totally hooked on right now. Love it. And I know you're going to laugh, maybe even eye roll.
I'm ready.
And now, the shipping forecast brought to you by the Met and the Maritime Agency.
Oh, really? You've gone into is it helping you sleep?
Is
it helping you
am
chill?
in love with it. If you guys, if you're listening or watching,
I've got the
you don't know what this
forecast
thing
on my
is.
shirt there. There you go. No.
Did you
I have
really?
no idea what that's referring to.
No, it's just a chart. It's fine. I've never met someone outside of the UK who has any idea what this is. And to be honest, probably below the age of 40, I would say most Brits don't know what it is.
Not that guy. So there's this thing. I love this app called. We're not sponsored by it, but I love this app called Calm. I was pretty addicted to watching something before to fall asleep to, and it's really, really bad for you. It's just you don't get good sleep.
Got
it's
that
just
blue light coming in, much like this one. Yeah.
So I really want to, I want to sleep better. So I was like, okay, what can I do? But I still do need something for my ADD brain to not just go crazy with. So someone suggested the app Calm, and there's a whole bunch of different things you can do. There's Matthew McConaughey who's going to read his book to you first of all. Just get away fast.
See, I get that if it was you doing that impression for me. That I would love. But they also have the shipping
Matthew
forecast.
McConaughey, this is Troy Baker doing Matthew McConaughey. Going to do Matthew McConaughey. Going to just make me take my shirt off right quick. So, but then
I love his book. I really enjoyed Green Light. I
heard it was great.
Yeah,
I haven't read it or listened to it. Where you're
for the record, I'm still waiting for the story that you've already told.
Okay, sorry. So
no, the Calm app. It's okay. Keep going.
The Calm app, and so one of the things that I fell in love with was. The history of the Transformers as read by Peter Cullen. So Optimus Prime is reading to you.
How am I not listening to that?
But how does that? But how do you fall asleep to things where the information is valuable? Because you drift
everybody
off and
knows.
you lose.
You have to listen to it, and then you'll understand.
My next milestone gift to myself is Lego Optimus Prime. There you go.
Are you gonna? How many pieces? 1,200?
What are we looking at here? 10,000.
Jesus!
He's quite big, and he transforms as well.
Does that stand like
fully
as tall
transforms
as you?
as well?
10,000 is
no way, bro.
Yeah, he transforms. I get a big Lego set for every big milestone.
I want to track down an original G1 Megatron just to have it.
Oh, the gun.
I'm never
you
gonna
can't
get
find
the story
Megatron's not a gun anymore.
I've got him somewhere. I've also got Megatron up on the wall behind me though. That's
Jesus, I'm like on point.
Look at that.
So wait, that's the first one that introduced me to this was Optimus Prime telling me about the Transformers. It's amazing. I have no idea how it ends, by the way, because I've never made it through. But then
that's basically that addresses the point, though. Like I find that falling asleep listening to something that is even remotely interesting backfires because I either do manage to fall asleep, and then the next morning I'm like, fuck, what was that again? And you like rewind, and start again. And then you end up in this loop of the first chapter for eternity. Or I kind of delude myself into thinking I'm hearing it, and I sail through, and then I realize I didn't actually retain or learn anything.
I think that the shipping podcast, or the shipping podcast, the shipping podcast is about two people, whether or not they should be in a relationship. The shipping forecast, I think, would be perfect for you.
Well, it's also meaningless unless you know what the terminology means.
And that's the thing.
Yeah.
But they're saying, so the history of it is, it was first published in 1861. It was then broadcast by BBC4 and has not been off the air since 1924. Except for once during the war, because they were afraid that it would provide valuable information to the enemy. Yeah. So, but what it is literally the information of the waters that are surrounding the UK to provide information to maritime people to make sure that they're not sailing into dangerous waters. And just here's what you can expect going out. And since they started producing this, it's like saved countless lives. Like the attrition and the rate of dropping from shipwrecks like dropped dramatically because they were able to give information. So, but everyone now in the UK, it's kind of like become a part of British culture.
It's like how the flag used to wave on TV at the end of the day in American TV, right? It's
absolutely.
The same kind of vibe. Yeah.
It was the sign off for the channels. Like we would play the national anthem and the flag waving.
You did jingoistic nationalism. We did valuable information that saved lives. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
But the guy that did
that's just you trying to collectively atone for
exactly.
Conquering half the planet.
Back that ship up a little bit more because you kind of gave it to us. You're our big brother. We learned it by watching you. Let's talk about India for a second.
Yes, my apologies.
So the guy that read it for the BBC is the one that's putting this out, and he gives a great little prologue. It's like, here's what this is, because most people outside the UK don't know what this is. But the way that he reads it, there's a certain rhythm to it, and it's so great. It's like Fitzroy, moderate 1,000, clearing by 0600 tomorrow morning, and it's just perfect.
It's like someone reading out like a vector file. It's just maths basically expressed as a series.
But it's
of
familiar words, and so you're like, okay, I can get a track. My lunch is here.
Oh, fantastic!
Thank you. Welcome to ASMR. Troy.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love that we're
chimichanga. I didn't have time to grab lunch before the pod. So anyway, I thought you would, Mike, appreciate that.
So does it just lull you to sleep?
100%. You should totally check it out.
Because it doesn't do what you're describing, Austin. That you can't follow it. You can't take away any information from it that's actually useful. It just sounds like it's like lorem ipsum, but like said out loud. Oh, you know what lorem ipsum is, Troy?
I don't. Please introduce me. I don't. Tell me.
I love lorem ipsum. So lorem ipsum is fake Latin that's used when you're doing like typesetting or you're like doing. You've seen lorem ipsum on stuff. It's basically if you're doing like you want to do like a graphic design template or a website or something where you just need like a block of placeholder text. It used to be that the typesetters would use like stock, like there'd just be certain poems or paragraphs. But what happened was that the client would read those paragraphs and like give you feedback on that. So what they eventually arrived at, and I think lorem ipsum's been in use for at least 100 years. I would need to actually look into the history of this, but basically it's gibberish Latin.
I would have assumed it was far more recent. I didn't.
Well, the opening, so the first sentence is always lorem ipsum dollar mit something else, which basically means the most important thing is that this text doesn't mean anything. And then
I really want to get this as a tattoo.
And then it writes a bunch of, and then you just do like randomly generated Latin underneath that. Go to loremipsum.com, Austin, and just they'll have like a history section.
Be our Alanah, please.
Be our Alanah, Austin. Be our Alanah. But like it's a really cool, like it's just basically gibberish text. So what I'm saying is lorem ipsum, it's deliberately chosen because it matches the general word length and letter like frequency of English. So if you look at it on a page, it looks roughly Englishy, but in actuality, it's absolute gibberish.
Kind of like America.
So this blows my mind. This blows my mind. Apparently, like certain fragments from lorem ipsum are are like close enough to real Latin that they can be like fragments can be found as far back as 45 BC.
Oh wow,
from
there you
Cicero.
go.
Wait, what?
It's placeholder.
It's not a real language then.
No, it's basically
It's Latin.
like Latin. It's scrambled Latin, but it says used as placeholder text. This part blows me away. Earliest known record of it is from the 1500s when a printer used it to make it says a specimen book, which I assume would mean like a
Lorem
prototype.
ipsum dollar mit armet or sit armet.
This has got to be used somewhere as a spell.
That's right. Yeah, it's actually
Probably
like a
in some
demonic
like
curse or something.
EverQuest or
But
whatever.
I swear that because the first sentence, it's kind of just a standardized thing that you always use the first bit.
Oh my God.
But I think
I
that
have
is
to
like
put this
trans.
There's a game that I'm in right now, and someone was like, "Hey, do you want to put any Easter eggs?" I have to do this. Oh my God.
But make sure it's like Lorem ipsum Bithel da 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 da, and just like
All right, Wintry. Pearce. Becker.
Oh, no,
Exactly.
I'm completely wrong. It doesn't mean this is fake text. It means, nor is there anyone who loves or pursues or desires to obtain pain of itself because it is pain. Apparently is what the opening sentence was means. Sorry, I need to put my light back.
According
according to
not
this,
gibberish.
according to
That's
this,
beautiful.
there is no literal translation though. Like
The first line
Scholars
is based
maintain.
on an actual Latin kind of phrase. But yes, as you say, it's been kind of garbled over time. But yeah, it's like, basically now, Troy, you're going to spot it everywhere. Now we've pointed it out to
translation-
you, you're going to
you
notice
left off
lorem ipsum in like whenever you see like a placeholder, whenever you see like a graphic design portfolio. I don't know how often you see a graphic design portfolio. If you see like, look for it in like when you see like a character reading
It's
a
my
newspaper
porn.
in a movie, you'll often see they've just filled it with lorem ipsum.
There's a you left off the second half of the sentence of the original source translation. Nor is there anyone who loves or pursues or desires to obtain pain of itself because it is pain, but occasionally circumstances occur in which toil and pain can procure him some great pleasure.
Oh, there you go.
That's the
I am pretty
Which is
sure.
ironic.
the
It's a
crucial-
phrase- it's a set of
crucial
writing
back
designed
half.
to save time and effort because you're basically avoiding someone giving you feedback on the text.
It's also, I'm pretty sure, a scene in Naruto. But
You've seen
So
it
here's-
everywhere.
you know,
You're not
eight
going to
people
not
got
see
that
it
joke.
now. You're not going to not see it. You're going to see it
all
everywhere.
right.
Yeah, I always know that I've found an accidentally abandoned or dead website. That's always the giveaway where you go to Google something and you're way down in the results, like trying to find something very specific, and you come across some like WordPress thing that was never actually finished, and all the text on there is lorem ipsum something or other.
I remember
You
when
realize,
I was first starting out as a graphic designer, I used to have a text file that was just lorem ipsum. It was just a text file of like copy and paste into things. And now, if you right click in most like Adobe products or whatever on a text box, there's just an option to fill it with lorem ipsum by default. Like it's just
This is going to be the name of my fake assistant.
Laura Ipsum.
Laura Ipsum is my assistant.
so here in a related vein, something that
Laura, did you book that hotel? Guys, I'm sorry. Miss Ipsum? Yes, hi. Miss Ipsum, dictated
Sort
but
of
not
like
read.
Dollar
Quoting.
sit Ahmet, Laura. Dollar sit
Alan
Ahmet.
Smithy. I got this weird, like, at some point long ago, I had set up a Google alert where if my name shows up in like an article, it'll just forward it to me.
We've all done it.
And-
None of us are above that. Let's be honest. The three of us did not get into cool positions by being humble
It's the
people who don't
internet's
have
version
Google
of
alerts. You're
masturbation.
fine.
No,
we all
it's
get it.
fair.
Googling
It-
yourself is the internet's version.
No, but this is Google auto self-forwarding. It was a good way to find, like in the early days, it was if a game mentions the music in the review, I didn't have to Google every review site because that was useful clippings for future like pitches for
You don't have
panels.
to explain
and
your ego to
it's all
us.
very
Austin.
helpful.
We're all very
We
proud of you and the
understand.
things you've achieved. We
So,
get
yeah,
it.
so
of all
here
the crowds
is-
you don't have to explain ego in, me and Troy, like that's a safe
I'm just
crowd.
saying. I'm saying it
One
can serve
of us.
ego
One
and
of us.
it can serve ego and have 5% of that be useful pragmatism. So I got a Google alert the other day for this is just one of those like this is the new version of lorem ipsum, I'm quite sure, because a website called Vietnam Reflections, which it looks like it's some kind of like what's the website where you like upload a graphic design and they'll put it on anything? like on a coffee mug or on a
Red
whatever.
Zazzle or Zazzle, yeah.
Yeah, one of those kinds of. So this appears similar to that because here's a T-shirt available that is just the Journey soundtrack cover, like as a square on a T-shirt, and it goes, here is the it says like related articles, which I don't even know what that means. Presumably similar clothes, but there's no way this wasn't generated by the most batshit crazy text generator, because basically instead of nouns they use names. I was sitting here reading it and I found myself just enthralled by the bizarreness of this. It goes, every year Dantes can be seen queuing to buy the latest models, even when they already have a perfectly glorious phone that does not need replacing. Their Cuthbert was, in this moment, a wonderful Jocelyn. When Angela is more popular, it reduces the number of brick and mortar stores, which create thousands of retail jobs. Also, the rise of Wilfred boosts the development of the quick-witted industry and distribution process. The Frank Dante comes from an exclusive Ethelbert. One cannot separate Brenna's from likable Ernesto's. Having been a gymnast, individual sports also provide better opportunities for Dominics to challenge themselves by getting goals and achieving political best. I'm about a third of the way through.
Google.
I'm going to need you to record that
SEO
and
exploit.
make that my newest calm go to sleep thing.
Get Peter Cullen to read that for you.
Isn't it amazing? It doesn't it feel AI generated where
That's what it is. So that will be someone
it's right on
with-
the
Yeah.
It's right on the edge of making sense. It's one of those it's just because all those sentences individually have a sort of grammatical coherence, but it's just sort of going nowhere.
Well, it's designed.
and
That will be designed to fool Google into think. So Google's constantly browsing.
There's no fooling Google. It
There's no
knows.
fooling Google. You can't.
It's aware. It's become sentient.
So this is
that
a
guy got
workaround.
fired because he was the one who realized, right?
So basically, instead of lorem ipsum, which is clearly placeholder nonsense, this is
And
meant
my
to.
assistant.
This is nonsense designed to trick the little Google bugs that go out around the internet and find stuff.
So I shouldn't have bought 20 of these T-shirts.
You should buy 30 of those T-shirts because someone went to a lot of effort to get you to find that via a search result.
Yeah.
Why are you on that page? You're on that page because they had. Was it Austin Winfrey?
My name was in there because it's literally my name is on the T-shirt because it's the album cover from Journey on this so-called. But clearly, what you're telling me is that this is a credit card phishing scam.
Not a scam. Well, it's definitely pushing you towards some kind of weird, kind of probably drop ship kind of. Not drop ship.
Let's find out. Mike, give your credit card number.
Yeah, I'll do it now. I'll hold it up to the screen.
Does anybody want to volunteer?
Let me grab that for you. I've got my wallet in my pocket here.
Yeah, I didn't know what it was. And every now and again I save things where I'm like, when we're back, when I on the next Play, Watch, Listen roundup, when I have a moment in which I can ask a random question and somehow your lorem ipsum teed me up perfectly to so I've done my part. What else you guys got for the week?
I teed that up perfectly.
Yes, I'm saying
good job.
I've done my contribution.
Mike did nothing.
I'm very proud of you both. You've done really well. This is a great podcast. You should be very proud of what you're achieving.
Should we just end it here? Should we just send Alanah, here's our episode for
we
this?
didn't
It's
need
20 minutes long.
We nailed it in half an hour.
It's 19 minutes long.
Yeah.
I would pass along this to you, and we won't do it for Alanah because she's good. I was in Toronto, the Canada one, and I had a wonderful time just kind of hanging out with fellow nerds. It was a really cool show. But there were a lot of people that came up to me talking about how much they loved the podcast. And I don't know why.
You don't know why they love the podcast, or you don't know why they felt the need to tell you?
No, it was so encouraging.
You
because
promptly disparaged them publicly after saying so.
Well, I can't listen to anything else you have to say.
You basically did the Alec Guinness, you need a life.
You're clearly insane.
Yeah.
Where is the person who looks after you? Where are they?
Exactly.
You're talking about how great the show was.
It was so encouraging because they're like, cool. This is. A lot of people have said,
it's their fall asleep app.
It's their.
It's like the shipping forecast makes no sense at all. I could just fall asleep to it.
Whenever you talk, Troy, that's what makes me realize I'm on the internet too much. Thanks.
It's my favorite almost good fortune cookie I ever came across. Which was, you remind me that there are greater things in life. It's like, I almost stuck the landing on that one.
You inspire me to do better.
To look for better, yeah.
Wait a
Exactly.
minute.
That's nice,
whose internet
though.
is buggy right now? Is it mine? My internet connection is unstable.
Yeah, I'm
you
not saying
seem very
anything.
clear here.
Well,
Sorry.
But you were saying
I
about
pay
how
people
brilliant
for
we
that.
are. Please continue.
no,
Troy.
people were very kind, and so many people have talked about how this was the podcast. They found us, in the middle of the pandemic, and it was something that they could latch onto, and the conversations they love. It's funny because we don't think about this conversation happening for anybody else necessarily.
I think that's why it works, to be honest. I think if we were very much broadcasting, I think we'd become obnoxious. I don't know. Or more obnoxious, maybe. I don't know.
More.
More
We
obnoxious.
already
We're
are.
pretty obnoxious. Yeah, this is just a nice excuse to hang out with three people I think are great.
What is happening this week? Like, I know Burning Man is happening this week for anybody who cares, and that's been an interesting challenge, apparently. It's quite windy.
Never
Nobody
been to
cares.
Burning Man.
Never have. Never. No desire whatsoever.
I don't think it'd be my crowd. I think I'd be the grumpy British guy in the corner. It doesn't seem...
I never heard of it before moving to California. So, are you aware of Burning Man at all? Like, is it a
from
wholly
media,
Canadian or
like-
Canadian California thing?
I'm aware of... Yeah, it's definitely like a California thing, but I'm aware of it from osmosis, from pop culture and stuff. I've seen TV shows where they've had an episode about Burning Man or whatever.
Yeah, for those who are not aware, Burning Man is an annual festival that's been going on for like 30 years, maybe 40 years, something like that. That takes place out in the middle of Death Valley on the playa. And it is the space is enormous. It's something like 10 miles in diameter or something.
86. I typed when was the first Burning Man, and it goes
86 was
August
the first
28, 2022.
You're doing a really good job of
being.
being the one on Google. I love that. I really appreciate
thanks.
you. Carry on.
I'm doing my best.
Stand fast at your
Alanah
post,
impression.
soldier. You're doing well. It's a combination of kind of bohemian culture and celebration of that. It's there's people that definitely this is their time to experiment with psychedelics or other substances, both nefarious and not.
It's also very exhibitionist. Like when you say a bohemian, it's sort of the impression it creates is in the spirit of that kind of like Mad Max
very
sort of vibe. It's a kind of clothing semi-optional thing for like tens of thousands.
And by the way, I fully recognize I am
Which in the extreme desert, boiling heat is probably both welcome and also just like every year, a month after Burning Man is a lot of skin doctor. Like I got a weird thing. I
Or
got
Burning Man is what you're saying.
Are you
looked
just
at,
bad? Yes.
yeah.
You 100% have cancer. I am explaining this from very much of an observational, outside, second, hand. I have friends that have gone or continue to go. So I've never been. So I cannot speak to it personally. I, for some reason, just have a weird thing about it, and I don't know why. It's
Weird
you
negative.
want to be one of the
weird
cool
kind of-
kids?
I don't
Like some
think
people
so.
feel like they missed the boat on a thing, so they put up a
Therefore-
sort of psychological defense barrier that goes,
I have
therefore
absolutely
it
been that
sucks and I'm
person.
above it.
It was terrible. But I
Yeah.
think that it doesn't sound in any way appealing to me. And part of it is once you get there, like if let's say you roll in and you set up camp, then first of all, it's 6 hours just to get in because it's just one road and a shit ton of cars. But then once you get in, people can come in and set up around you and set up their camp attached to yours. So you can't just leave. You're there, and it's like 2 weeks long, I think, up to.
Oh, is it
2
really
weeks,
2
10
weeks? I
days?
just assumed it was like a weekend.
No,
I think my impression was that it's a week, but I don't think it's as long
it may
as 2
be.
weeks.
It may
but-
be 1 week.
I bet
but
they
it's
spend a
definitely-
week setting up some of the stuff though, right? Because some of the stuff is massive.
Yeah,
These
and the
enormous sculptures and
installations
things.
are incredible. Like what people do. There's incredible demonstrations of art from just
for sure.
sculptures to
Big
light
sculptures,
installations, like places that you can literally just they set up temporary structures. And the cool thing about it is at the end of the burn, they burn the man, which is why it's called Burning Man. It's a huge effigy of a person that they burn. And
and it's massive. Like it's like
the size of a
30
building.
feet tall or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's just unbelievably huge.
And
Is
it's
it like-
very much,
is it a-
everyone who's gone has been like, this is very much of a spiritual journey. There
Yeah.
are people that have like, you write something that has been one of your great regrets or whatever it is, and you throw it in the burn. It's very much of a quasi-religious spiritual experience for everybody.
So is it like an
coupled with
organized
a lot
thing?
of substances?
Is it like there's a company that runs it, or is it very kind of folk, kind of just it happens? Like what's
there's definitely
structure?
an organization.
Yeah.
Like there's an infrastructure, and a lot of it is they are really starting to crack down. There's been some people who services have popped up saying, "Hey, do you just want to show up? We'll set up your camp for you so that we can have everything ready for you, and you can just roll in." And the people that run Burning Man will show up and go, "You get your tickets?" They're like, "No, we're just here setting up." Like, "Get your shit and get out of here." And they'll kick people out because they want people to have the full experience
Right.
of, no, you
They
need to
don't want,
come
like,
in.
They don't want like
There's-
Airbnbers. They want like
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a bartering system where it's like, hey, whatever you have, you just give. And there's no selling of anything. So it's very much of we're trying to have some sort of utopian culture that's happening.
Right.
And growing up in I'm not necessarily conflating these two or drawing too tight of a comparison. It's very loose, but every year we would go to summer camp. And there's something about going to a place where you can kind of separate from the people that know you, especially like your parents. And I don't know if you guys have experienced anything like this, but I was always afraid of being my real self when there was somebody else who knew me from normal land who could go, bullshit, that's not you. So I never felt uninhibited enough to just go, I like this, because I thought that someone would always call me out on my shit. But going to summer camp, the church services there were always more amped. It was way more of an emotional experience. And so that always, like, the music was way more geared towards, like, let's really have this intense emotional experience. It's not a cognitive thing at all. It's all experiential. And so I understand the experience of that. And then you say, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And then come Monday, it's like, you're back to your normal shit. So I know people have that withdrawal of the week after from Burning Man. I have friends that are in a form of depression after it, because it was just, they lived in a perfect place where everyone got along, there was a community of support around people. So I understand that aspect, but
There's a sound designer named Robin Arnott who had an experience like that very seminally at Burning Man, and was like, sort of tripping balls out of his mind on mushrooms, and had this really kind of intense personal experience, so much so that he dedicated years of his life to creating a VR, like a psychedelic VR experience, to essentially bring this to anybody anywhere in the world, called Sound Self, where it's kind of amazing, actually. I tested it early on for him, and even gave him some source sounds for it from our Banner Saga recording session, of all things. So this is a while back, but he basically created an interface where you put on a piezo mic around your neck.
Yeah.
And you like hum, and it basically is just sort of taking in the vibrations and the frequencies in this. So you can be very quiet, because it's a piezo that's built around the contact with your almost directly vocal cord. If you
just so people know, a piezo mic is something that they'll use, like they'll put it on a piano, they'll put it on different things to where it literally is. It's
where I first learned what a piezo mic is?
Go.
From playing the Sierra very original bad FMV game SWAT. Where they talk about how police and special forces wear piezo mics because they can whisper really quietly and hear each other completely clearly in their walkie-talkies. I never knew what that was until I played that game. But that was so yeah. You put on a piezo mic and it plugs like by USB essentially into your computer or to whatever you're using for the VR. And he created these algorithms that take you in this kaleidoscope of visual and sonic craziness, and it'll feed back on the pitch in the headphones that you're humming and create a whole kind of truly...
Oh, so this kind of resonant kind of feedback loop.
Yeah, exactly. So you'll see people using it just kind of going, and inside the VR is like basically an acid trip without the acid. Like it's pretty amazing actually and he did it, hoping, like he made this game called Deep Sea, for VR that it wasn't initially VR. He made it by taking a gas mask, blacking out the goggles, and then building a game around it. So it's an audio only game that takes place underwater, and it is fucking terrifying. And because you have no visual reference, you can have your eyes wide open and you cannot see shit. And it was so viscerally kind of
that was a while ago, right?
crazy.
That was like 2010.
10 years
Man,
ago.
Because
Yeah.
I remember
an actual
demoing
regulator
Thomas
in
Was
there
Alone next to that years ago. Like,
Yeah,
must have been a decade ago.
It was a good solid 10 years ago, because I remember him presenting it in the experimental gameplay workshop at GDC, and then that's what led him to go pursue Sound Self, because he thought, I need to use sort of my powers for good. I made the most terrifying game ever, and then he went and had this amazing Burning Man experience, and basically said, now I want to make a game.
Is it still on some platform? Sound Self, a technodelic.
That sounds like it.
7 out of 10 on Steam. So it's on Steam. I may try to hook this up, man. Check it out. Or
He's a
maybe
super interesting guy, and like he spent years of his life committed to. I mean, for all I know, he may still be working on some current iteration of it. I haven't talked to him in a little while, but lovely guy. And,
it begs the question of my other two people here.
What is art? Are games art? Go ahead.
Roger Ebert. Would you do psychedelics? Any desire, and the follow-up question would be, would you do it?
Obviously,
I never
presumably, you mean in a country where it was legal, Troy. You're asking that question specifically.
One would never dare dream of breaking the law anywhere.
I don't think. Is it still considered? I honestly don't know. Is it?
I think most psychedelics are illegal in definitely the UK.
Does California have laws? I feel like
there are laws, there are rules you have to live by.
I don't believe that mushrooms are, but I don't know if they. By the way, yeah, absolutely. We're talking
in a legal
completely
area where
abstract.
We're able to do that. Yeah,
yes,
totally abstract. Like we're not.
If you're in Amsterdam, let's say, where it's whatever, fine, all.
Any implication of violating government laws, we three are absolved. Alanah may be still considered liable.
Alanah will break any law that any man dares place on Alanah.
Exactly.
Quick pin. This dates this podcast, but Mikhail Gorbachev just died.
Oh,
really? Holy shit!
That feels like the end of a
era for sure.
Yeah,
92. Damn, he held in there for a long time.
He's been out of the public eye for so long that I actually wasn't aware he was still alive.
I didn't think he was still alive. I thought he had died years ago. Anyway, back to acid. What would you do? We're not going to honor Mikhail Gorbachev necessarily. It's just
it's funny. Someone who I had a period a few years ago where I went down a Sam Harris reading binge, and he was someone who was interesting because he, obviously was this sort of vocal, sort of so-called militant new atheist, along with Hitchens and Dennett and Dawkins. But he always stood very apart from the rest of them because he was very interested in, like, what is the scientific and or just humanist grounding for spirituality. There is a function that is serving, and how do we pursue that? And so he became quite interested in psychedelics and sort of extended, whatever you would call it, extended sensory experiences, or whatever the sort of more sort of clinical term for it would be. But the idea of that is offering you something very meaningful.
There's a human need for that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So he's the guy that, he's also like got he's very big into meditation. I mean, look, he's kind of all over the map in a lot of ways, politically and philosophically these days, and that I find fascinating. But he's an endless source of interesting, thought-provoking things, whether you agree or not. And the fact that he took such an interest in both meditation and sort of inward journey type pursuits, and as a function of that, psychedelics, for this guy that has a PhD in neuroscience and is like a super hardcore outspoken atheist, has always made it like be I'm really not a big user of anything because it's just never been my scene. It's never been, I'm one of those musicians that was like, music's plenty for me, which maybe makes me boring.
I feel the same about Mario.
But he made that, he always pinned that on me, or like flagged it as like, I certainly have a very egalitarian attitude about it from the standpoint. I don't give a shit if anybody, egalitarian is not the right word, but I have a very bohemian attitude, I guess, about it, where I go, I don't give a shit if anybody uses anything. I'm a pretty libertarian, anti-drug war guy in that regard. And that one's the only one that stood out to me is I really need to carve out a weekend and get fucked up on mushrooms.
Mushrooms specifically, or like, is it psilocybin or acid or?
It's always been specifically, well, psychedelics, I guess, as a broad category.
Okay.
But
because as I understand, they're all incredibly different experiences. Very much.
It's funny
so.
how it's like I went to college. I hung around a lot of folks on everything you can imagine, and yet I never really scrutinized it. I never really. I just was like, oh, they're in the corner doing whatever. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
So I'm profoundly ignorant to most all of it.
Mike, what about you?
So, like Austin, not like something I've kind of gone out of my way to experience, but I think I've said on the show before, like my thing is like I want to find the thing that you are personally like a connoisseur of, and I want to experience it with you. So like I've had amazing nights drinking whiskey with like massive whiskey fans. I've had amazing nights watching a movie marathon with someone who's obsessed. Like I will find the thing you love, and I will let you be my tour guide to that. And in the past, that has extended to various experiences, and I'm sure it will in the future. But but always legal. But yeah, so that's always my approach. Is I wouldn't be interested in this from a like on a personal level. I'd be interested in experiencing it with someone who was a connoisseur and would show me the way.
I remember there was somebody I remember that was like, you, me, and Troy need to do mushrooms together. I don't remember for the life of me who that was.
I remember you saying that.
I don't remember. It's driving me crazy.
It was Alanah, I think.
Probably.
Yeah.
Growing up the way that I did, it was so and
forbidden,
quite literally demonized.
Yeah.
That it was just an invitation. You might as well carve a pentagram on your chest. And so
speaking of, look what I did this weekend.
You guys want to see my new tattoo? There was always a line being crossed, and there's this new documentary on Netflix going, Change Your Mind, I think is what it's called. And it was talking about specifically that messaging was not limited to my household nor even like my generation. It was something that was broadcast loudly by all. There was a line of delineation going, no, this one, even though like the government created it. Right?
The FBI warning is going to play on your arcade cabinet behind you while you're saying this. You're
absolutely,
aware of that, right?
Especially if it was narc, whatever. Say no to drugs. Like that was the whole thing with the 80s.
Dare was
Dare
so
one,
omnipresent when I was growing up.
We had similar over here for sure.
And especially the hypocrisy, like if you want to dig into it, especially the 90s. Like the Iran-Contra scandal. If you want to, matter of fact, if you watch this season of The Boys, which I'm 3 episodes into right now, absolutely loving it, crushing it. Everyone's doing a fantastic job. Yeah. But them talking about the Iran-Contra scandal and cocaine and crack specifically, and how that was specifically sent to minority neighborhoods, especially within Los Angeles and South Central. Like that was the hypocrisy in that is just baffling. But I grew up with acid is bad. And so when I had friends that said, I'm going to go to Burning Man and my plan is to do this. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like it was such a, sure, go smoke your weed, do your edibles, whatever. If you're going to do mushrooms, I guess, okay, fine. But when you start talking about acids, like there was a conflation with like cocaine, acid, and heroin. It was like kind of like you just start doing those things. And it really hasn't been until watching that podcast and again, I think it's easy to stand across the divide of your ignorance from something and not allow the waves of empathy to pull you closer towards that water and understand that there's still a human, whoever is espousing whatever it is that they're talking about, there's a human heart that's connected to that. And so for me, well, and
also most of these things are just fundamentally not bad. Like they're
right.
Like,
we created a law which they're like alcohol was never bad in the church. It was Jesus drank wine, but all of a sudden you get into prohibition, and now there's this. I mean,
narrative. There are, to be clear, like there are most things have a bad potential outcome, and we should be mindful and
sure, but it is also typically in excess. It is, exactly. It is almost always in excess. As opposed to inherently bad.
Exactly.
Sure.
That's the thing.
Not
like
evil.
Like if I just binged carrots 24 hours a day, I'm sure I would reach a point where, if nothing else, the severe malnutrition from only having carrots would be.
Have I told the interesting story about carrots in the Second World War on the show before?
No.
This is gold.
Is it part of the shipping forecast?
It's similar. So in the Second World War.
In fake Latin, please, just to bring it home full circle.
So in the Second World War, British military, I think they invented some kind of new radar or something for their planes, and it basically allowed them to get the drop on a bunch of German planes during
Luftwaffe.
the war. Yeah, and they basically gave them like a greater viewing distance or whatever. And in order to try and delay the Nazis from knowing what was going on, there was a genuine concerted, and this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is like there's records of this. There's a concerted propaganda campaign to basically tell the British public that the reason for this happening was that the pilots were on a strict regimen of carrot-focused diet. Because carrots, and this is...
Is that where the eyesight thing comes from?
That's why every generation since knows carrots, they help your eyesight, right? Is because...
Absolutely.
Now, there is a chemical in them that apparently makes them, but the reason that was popularized because our grandparents were propagandized that the carrots were the reason
to cover for the effective
radar. And of course, the Nazis worked out eventually, obviously, but that was the intention.
Nazis are like binging all these carrots.
It was just it was classic
I love
kind of
those,
6 month
What if they have better
delay.
radar than we do? Shut up, Klaus.
Love that.
Well,
That's
there's
why
so
all
many
of your
stories
brands
like that.
told you to eat your carrots, because
The
they
funny
were
thing with me is
successfully
that
propagandized.
after being like, absolutely not, no, and my friend Pete Holmes was someone who grew up very, very similar to me, and he started getting into transcendental meditation and started reading stuff by like Richard Rohr, Alan Watts, and just started thinking about not only his faith, but just spirituality in a completely different way. And I'll let him tell his own story, but he started experimenting in psychedelics.
Not on the call, for the record.
Pete, go ahead. No, you can see Pete.
He's who delivered your burrito.
He's who delivered my burrito. He was in the shower, however, with David Fincher and Kojima. So
Sexy.
he was the one that was like
the off-camera cannon that is building for Troy's side of his call.
I'm really proud of us for being how on track we've been, by the way. We've kind of had a single through line. Like, you can trace it back.
For the record, I'm still waiting to hear the story of I've heard this story before. You never even told the story that you were going to tell again.
Oh, that was the John DiMaggio story.
Oh, when I first got to LA, there was the auditions for Futurama, and I said no, and John remembered that. And he was like, thanks, man.
All right, so back to Pete Holmes.
Sorry, how did you say though, Troy? How did you say
I can finally close that browser tab. Thank you, God.
Click, click.
Double click.
He was like, it changed him. Like, it was an experience that he was a formative, fundamentally life expanding change for him.
That's scary though, right? That like that would have such an impact. That's kind of
it is.
That's always been my resistance, from the standpoint that, like, I enjoy when I've had just enough to drink. Well, no, that's the thing. Is like I work really hard to not have a narrow view of life. Like, I meet a lot of people. I go a lot of places. I try a lot of things. I'm not afraid to make an ass out of myself. All those kinds of things.
You're a card-carrying member of the Sure Why Not Club, for sure.
Yeah, and like, what's the worst that can happen is sort of like very, very few things where you go, what's the worst case outcome of this scenario? Very few things have, very few things have truly consequential outcomes like that. And so most things are worth trying at least once, especially, if you have your eyes open. And so but like, every time I've gotten sort of way too drunk and kind of really properly shit-faced, I don't enjoy the feeling of being out of control. Where I feel like I'm not at the wheel. And that's the thing that people go, when it opens up a whole new dimension, I go, yeah, but biochemically, I think that's actually more accurately that you're just not at the wheel anymore. And there is...
I don't want to get too far into that,
but there's also a part of me that goes, that's I have an instinctive resistance to that.
I'm
Maybe
the
that's a flaw,
exact-
but I.
No. I'm the exact same way. And I've had really good highs. I've had really bad highs. Speaking specifically about that to Pete, he was like, it's not that you are not at the wheel or that you're not out of control. It's that everything you interact with, you see on a completely different level. So you are 100% in control of this. It's just that tree you can hear. It's things of that nature.
But that's where my brain goes. Just like if you try to objectively analyze that, you are putting a filter between yourself and the world. Our senses are already a filter between us and the world.
That's an error. Your brain is having a perception mismatch.
Is it adding a filter or is it removing a filter? Is it that's what I'm saying?
Trees don't make a sound, right?
That we know of.
Well, that's where I go objectively.
Yeah, I think I'm exhausted a little on this.
That's why I look at like that what NASA released, the video of the NASA releasing the sound of the black hole, right? Now, granted, that was
perfect example in our favor, though. Like a piece of equipment can measure it, given the right piece of equipment.
You couldn't hear that.
Given the right piece of equipment. But either A, we haven't invented that piece of equipment yet, or B, we are that equipment.
But is your supposition that your ear is hearing stuff that you're unaware of? And
my posit is that there's a potential that there could be, not a presupposition at all, or a supposition. I'm not saying that it is possible. I'm not saying that it is. I'm saying that why not? So my question is this creating a false sense? Is it going, like you said, it's putting a filter on and it's like, ooh, everything looks like this? Or is it going, let's remove... I always think about
Occam's razor would be that you're dreaming while awake.
100%.
I see what you're saying.
That there's a chemical that's being released in my brain that is making me think these things as opposed to seeing the world for the way that it really is. I don't know.
Well,
I guess I don't know either.
When you play a game like Mass Effect, the whole idea of... No,
Go
I got
on.
a point.
I'd love to see
Yes, we are a gaming
do.
podcast. I remember.
This reminds me of Star Wars in the sense
my Commander Shepard helmet that's hiding behind that box right there.
I don't know. What's in the box? What's in the box? Go ahead. I don't want to know.
What's in the box? Look at this beauty.
Look at that.
I've got a
Sign
T-shirt with that on.
Hundreds. What a recall. Oh, man. You're ready for a Netflix special.
Shit.
That was good. That was real good.
That was surgical.
That was in the chamber, just ready for the shot. Like
nobody else could have delivered that without that
patiently waiting for the deer to cross into your.
All right,
your
go on.
inside.
Make your Mass Effect bullshit
in Mass
connection.
Effect, the whole like they basically wanted to create a RPG where you had the equivalent of magic powers, so that you could have your tank, you could have your hackers, you could have your whatever, and you could also have like the people that basically have force powers. And the way they essentially science their way into it is that some heretofore undiscovered, Matt Damon disagrees, some heretofore undiscovered chemical element they call element 0 essentially unlocks a sense for all intents and purposes that we up till now have been unaware of. And that's always been a kind of appealing idea that you don't know what you don't know, and our science can't measure it because we haven't built a thing to look for a thing we don't even know is there. In the same way that if you went back to the 1600s and tried to explain to them radio waves, like they have no concept that they could be bathing in them, and they don't know they're there.
Technology aside, like ways of being, if you went back in time to the 19th century and tried to explain rap music to them, they wouldn't like humans just in and of ourselves, the internet. But we have a capacity just within our own minds to think of things that were not thought of hundreds of years ago.
Yeah. So there is a hubris in asserting
that we now know all the answers.
That we know everything. Now we finally reached the point where we can,
It's a very Victorian mindset of everything.
This is why
we're smarter than all the people that came before, and we have the end of history. If you ever want to be humbled, go to Crystal Palace in London, where they've got all the old dinosaur sculptures, where they were absolutely certain. I don't know if you've seen the Crystal Palace dinosaurs, but they're all these like lizard kind of iguana things.
My favorite...
And it's like they were certain that's what a dinosaur looked like.
One of my favorite demonstrations of this is I've watched a lot of like cosmology lectures on YouTube where I can't remember who it was. I think it was Lawrence Krauss talked about how because of the way that the universe is expanding, and because of the perpetual and seemingly unending acceleration of that expansion, the whole redshift of distant galaxies phenomenon that let us realize that some unknown force, so-called dark energy, is driving the increased acceleration of galaxies apart from each other. Eventually, they'll be moving away from us faster than the speed of light spanning the gap between them, which means that however many billions or maybe even trillions of years from now, someone on planet Earth in the Milky Way would look up into the heavens and see only the stars of the Milky Way held together by local gravity, and that there would be not only no evidence of other galaxies, never mind hundreds of billions of them, but no way to have known that ever existed at all. Right. And so their knowledge of the universe would be confined to what people believed, a couple hundred years ago, when that we had no ability to distinguish points of light as stars separate from galaxies when looking at the night sky. And so our conception of the size of the universe was much smaller. And that blew my mind, to think that there would be galaxies so far apart from each other and moving faster, like space would be expanding faster than the speed of light between those galaxies. The galaxies wouldn't necessarily be moving faster than the speed of light, but the expansion of the space between them would be faster than the speed of light. And everybody would be a little island unto themselves. That haunted me the first time I thought of it.
I just want to point out real quick. Hold on. I just want to point out.
Yeah.
Austin is not high. So imagine
Austin doesn't need
this
drugs.
man.
That's the main takeaway.
I think the way I talked about getting high demonstrated very clearly that I am not high.
This man high would be the. It would be the just.
I think
it would be what I would binge watch.
I think he'd just be sat there, kind of observing. I think Austin would be. I can't wrap
my head around it. But this is why. I'm sorry to interrupt, Mike. This is why I go. I'm open to the concept of. I don't think that the God of the Bible has it at all. But this is why I have to keep a page or finger on that page going, maybe, just because I don't know. I absolutely think that there could, Pam and I were talking about this too, as far as like dying and what that actually looks like. I was like, to me, when someone goes, every near-death experience that people have had, that is literally just the endorphin dump. There's a chemical, and I'm sure you guys know what it is, or somebody can tell us what it is, that just releases at the moment of death. And so it fires off. It's basically your mind getting super, super high before you die. I'm like...
Combined with oxygen deprivation and things like that,
all
which
of those
also
things
cause
this
issues.
Crazy amount of euphoria. People see a white light, they feel this incredible glow. I'm like, that to me is a fingerprint of God. Right, you know what I mean? Like that's someone going. It could be
even with a very sensible kind of biochemical explanation. It
absolutely,
still feels...
that's just design. That's just execution. You know what I mean? But that to me, I could look at that and go, man. Like if I'm trying to think of an example of like if we're getting ready for bed and I know that Pam needs a glass of water before she goes to bed, and so I come and I get her a glass of water and I set it on her nightstand. And she just walks in and finds a glass of water on her nightstand. She doesn't have to know that it was me that did that. She just knows that the thing that she needed, hand of God, that it did that. So when I look at that, I'm not saying that God did that. What I'm saying is...
Abigail Breslin and you have glasses of water all over your bedroom?
Swing for the fences.
It's science, yeah.
I got it.
You didn't need it. Swing away.
I just think that you could look at that and go, hey, I got you. And that in the moment where you need it most, in the moment where you're going to feel the most alone, I got you a little present. And to me, I absolutely 100%
right before you
believe,
go to bed, Pam feels her most alone.
Yes.
But also because he's watching videos on his phone.
It works for us.
That's my second call.
I was going to say one more thing and then I'll hand it off to you, Mike. The notion of, does something happen after we die? Absolutely, categorically, yes. Absolutely. Matter can neither be created nor destroyed. We look and we see this system of what happens to energy. A star explodes and it goes off and it forms planets or new stars are being born all the time. Energy is constantly being recirculated and therefore redistributed into new things. So I absolutely believe. I think the arrogance of humanity and hubris, like you said, will not allow us to accept the fact that something happens after we die. We're just never going to be aware of it. And that's what most people have a hard time, including myself, letting go of, is that I won't be invited to the party that happens afterwards. So to answer your original question, maybe my issue with Burning Man is the fact that I do feel a little left out. Mike Bithell, I yield the floor to you.
I guess I was just going to say that, like, the atheistic kind of stance I would take here is that, like, a glass of water is appreciated and beautiful. You don't necessarily need an explanation for it to exist. You can just say, you know what, there is a by weird happenstance of biology, this thing happens that makes death a little bit less horrible.
But do you see anything else in nature?
And you don't need. Well, you can find beauty in nature without having to ascribe an author to it. You can say, this is wonderful, this is beautiful, this is magical, this is poetic, this is everything.
But do you not think that happenstance is a diminishing of the design of...
I think it's more impressive that the world is inherently beautiful because, but also crucially as well, there is also the biomechanical explanation, which is we think the world's beautiful because we have evolved to live and exploit in the world. So therefore, we think a sunset's beautiful because on a biological level, the sunrise and sunset has kept our species going all these years. You know.
Even separate from that,
and even separate, it is beautiful. Abstract, random beauty is still beautiful.
And it's beautiful that something unguided, through conscious means, unconscious bottom up quote design can yield something as beautiful and disparate as the animals we see, everything about the ecosystem, the plant world, the eukaryotes, the funguses, everything, all in this massive, crazy, interwoven sort of tapestry of life. The fact that all happens as just a series of interactions. To me, that is actually the unguided nature of it is what's so beautiful.
Yes.
I don't think the faithful have a monopoly on finding beauty. And
I agree 100%. It's simply an explanation to it. And it's a very, in most cases, it's a very cheap one. And I'm not disparaging anyone that is a person of faith, of any faith.
Of course
I'm just simply saying it's a very easy, and I would always encourage anybody of any faith or no faith to constantly challenge that viewpoint. It either reaffirms the position that you have, or it allows me to find a new version of that. But specifically to the sunrise and sunset thing, the reason why we find those things appealing and beautiful and poetic is because we need it. There is a certain biological thing that happens. There's cells in the bottom of your iris that when you get low angle sunlight early in the morning, fires off a chemical reaction in your body to boost cortisol levels so that your body temperature rises, so that you set your circadian clock so that you feel more awake. And that lets you know morning you get up. Inversely to that is when the sun is going down, same thing. You see the sun going down, it tells your body it's time to go to bed. So there's a reason why we love, oh my gosh, that's so beautiful. Pam and I do this every morning. We watch the sunrise and it's like, God damn, it's beautiful. The reason why is my body's going, I need that so much. There's a chemical not dependency upon that, but there's definitely a relationship between that spectrum of light hitting my eyes and doing something in my body.
We're interconnected, and I think humans are very prone to an arrogance where we don't think of ourselves as a part of the natural order of the planet, of the cosmos. We think of ourselves as a part or above or separate or observing these things rather than being integrated as a part of that system.
Yeah.
And that's what you're describing is of course we feel that way. We're part of it.
We're star stuff. Yeah. We're made from. There's literally the same stuff that's in our body as what's in a star.
We have been on a journey this episode.
What I love is it's definitely a Lawrence Krauss quote where he talks about the atom. What's more, in addition to being star stuff, just to give you a sense of the miracle that various atoms from throughout the universe would come together to form you, to celebrate in the.
Some of us more miraculous than others, though.
To celebrate in the inherent beauty of the improbability that is one's self. The atoms from your left hand. This is his quote. The atoms in your left hand almost undoubtedly came from a different star from atoms in your right hand. Wow. So the idea that you're not even from a source. You're like bits of everywhere. Yeah. And that to me. Again, that interconnectedness, especially because it's all quite understandable, and we have the overwhelming majority of knowable facts still to learn, but we know a fair bit as a collective species, and all that learn just makes it more interesting and beautiful.
But
to
also,
see
how cool is it that your
does
brain?
this.
How cool is it that your brain and all of our brains like take the thing you just said about the left hand 1 star, right hand 1 star, and even though you basically just described a sequence of verifiable objective facts, our minds all have this poetic level to them that it sounds beautiful. Like that interpretation is in itself a thing of beauty.
Yes.
That's a very intrinsic. Obviously, there's amazing kind of wordsmithery from the person the quote's originally from, but at the same time, you are, as the listener, being touched by that, manifesting kind of a poetic beauty yourself just from the way your brain puts those words together and puts meaning into it. That's phenomenal. That's incredible.
This episode of Play, Watch, Listen has been brought to you by Edna's Edibles. Edna's Edibles, made fresh in her kitchen every Sunday. The best edibles. If you're going to get high with Edna. Thank you again.
We would be so tedious high.
Did we actually
Can you imagine
even,
the three of us?
Was there even like a glancing blow at video games in this conversation?
You mentioned Mass Effect.
Yeah, you mentioned Mass Effect.
Right.
And we said Star Wars.
I called
And
Troy Marcus Phoenix,
Gorbachev.
which is how this whole thing started.
We're topical as fuck, y'all. I'm proud of us.
Yeah, I feel like actually the funny thing is I had some thoughts that I was very curious to get
Nobody gives a shit.
opinions on, but yeah, no, I mean, once you go to levels of like cosmic grade spirituality,
Mike had the
everything
button.
feels
Mike had the button. It was like, it's beautiful. I did a shitty joke. You picked the conversation thread back up. Do the intro.
true, yeah,
Let's
this
get
is all
out of here.
gonna
We got to
get
go back to
cut.
work.
It's all gonna get cut.
No, it's not.
All right, well, I guess since I've been Googling, I am the Alanah this week, so that's how it usually sounds to me. That's
it.
Mike,
His name.
an
My name.
exhausted game director.
From my perspective,
that's Troy, a totally baked game actor. And I'm Austin, a shilling, shameless composer who's
Buys
proud to say
t-shirts.
that Aliens Fireteam Pathogen came out today. Okay, bye!